Okay, we're on the Aflamid Gimel Amud Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom. Umegabe, Tanu Rabbanan, Megabe. So that was a machlokas in the Mishnah, if you're allowed to pick up the twigs that are around the house, on the chasser rather. And Rabbi said, yes, everything in the chasser you have your mind on. Even if you didn't think about it, the twigs and small pieces of wood over there, the standard is that you're going to use it. And Rabbanan say, no, only what's in the house. Tanu Rabbanan, the prices are going together with the shita of Rabbi Eliezer, that everything in the chatzar is mukhan. Tanu Rabbanan, Megabe ben chatzar, madlik shekol masha b'chatzar mukhan hu, that you're allowed to take any twigs from the chatzar because you had in mind on default that you're going to be using that. But that we have in the Mishnah already. But the price adds on, don't make piles. Don't make piles of these twigs. Why not? First of all, Shimon Matir, Machlokes. Tanakama says you're not allowed to make piles, even according to Rabbi Lezer. Shimon says you may. And the Gemara explains lots of Machlokes. But Mike and Miflagi, Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon. Marsava Mersi the Kamachnif Lamocha or Yom Achmina. Or Marsava Kedei Rosam Mochachasalav. That the Tanakama says that it looks like you're gathering. Machnif is to gather. It looks like you're gathering for tomorrow and for a different day. That you're gathering so many, they're making piles already. So it looks like you're doing more than you need. You don't need so many twigs, and you're not allowed to prepare for a different day. So therefore, collect whatever you need, but don't make piles out of it. Because the fact that the pot's right there, you're cooking. You have a pot in the chutzner, and you're cooking. Even if you make a lot of piles, everyone realizes that you're just interested in cooking this one pot. So machlokes, if you'd be allowed to make piles out of those twigs, and I think we pass like the Tanakama, the application is not so relative nowadays. People don't do this, but technically it will be usher to, even though you are allowed to gather the twigs, but you're not allowed to make piles out of them.
The verb is to gather.
Together, yeah. It's Aramaic. It's Aramaic. Like a koshesh kashlatev, and I think that's the Aramaic word over there. Okay. Next halacha, we said this is the very, very relevant, that you're not allowed to make a new fire. We said you're not allowed to strike a match. And the Mishnah had about 5 examples how to create a new fire with sticks and stones and a magnifying glass. So whatever the case is, you're not allowed to create a new fire. And why not? What's wrong? If you're allowed to make a fire, so make a new fire also. This has very much relevance nowadays, that we know that even though you are allowed to cook and pass on a fire, but you're not make a fire bigger, but you're not allowed to create a new fire. Why not? In what's the end, so my time, but why can't you make a new fire? Because you're creating molid. So this is a one-liner, and no talk of it. Rashi doesn't explain, and that's it. That looks like you're creating something. So it seems that it's only the Rabbanan, and it's nothing to do with nolad. I think this is true. I'm going to say something that I think is true. I didn't see anybody emphasizing it, but I think it should be emphasized that there's a difference between nolad and molid. Nolad means born, and that's the beginning of the Masechta. We spoke about muksa, and there's more extreme kind of a muksa when it's nolad, something which came to be and it wasn't. So it's okay. That we spoke about that. That's something which is nolad. Is that more of a muksa? And we spoke about in the beginning of the Masechta. We said that we personally, Ashkenazim, we hold that only machmir nolad more than a regular muksa, only on yantif. Okay, that's a lechus muksa. But molded is something altogether different. Molded is the fact that you brought it to creation, the fact that you created something. And the same idea is brought down in Shulchan Aruch from Masechah Shabbos over there. The Gemara says at the end of the 4th parak that you're not allowed to crush ice into water. And it doesn't say in the Gemara why not. Rashi over there says because you're molded. It doesn't bring down the Gemara, but the Choras Mamish, that's what he means to say, that you're creating. Rashi says it looks like you're creating the water. That you're it's not really creating anything. It's not a malacha, but it looks the fact that you're creating something. It seems like a malacha. So I think it's a big yesod that there's 2 issues. One is nolad, which has to do with milchus muksa, and one is molid, which is also only yesod rabbanan. But the point is not about muksa; it's about the fact that you brought something to a creation. You brought something. Here it's like a yesh ma'ayin kind of a thing. You're making a fire out of sticks and stones, friction, whatever it is, or striking a match. You brought something that's a molid. So you brought something to be. Over there, it's talking about changing a status from ice to water. So that's the issue called molid. Nolad, which is muktzah, is an issue, and we hold of it only on Yantif. We're not machmir nolad on Shabbos. So I just wanted to emphasize it. I think it's true.
Rebbe?
Yes, please.
Yeah, there's a stipler over here. Actually, the Ravid actually holds its meaning of muktzah, but he's a miyut. Most people hold exactly like you're saying, that it's one thing you didn't say is it's derabanan, but it's an issa derabanan of nexi kabore davar, and that is completely different from nolad, which is an inyan of muksa, and it's a heter of ochel nefesh, but but here it's the Rabbanan of Nexi Kabore, but the Stipler brings from the Ramban in the Tehillah in the beginning of Perek Gimel here. And in the Ramban, it might be a Dioraisa according to him, because what he holds is the following.
Okay, it's too long already. It's too long. But thank you that you told me that they do talk about it, and it's brought down this pshat in Shulchan and the Mishnah Berurah, and fine. The distinction between Molded and Ola. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll hear afterwards if you could tell us afterwards about the Rambam. Next halacha. So if you have these often like shingles, tiles that you want to heat up in order to be able to bake on it, so you're not allowed to heat it up. Even though, why not? The kasha is going to be expected. Why not? What's the problem? You're allowed to bake, you're allowed to cook, you're allowed to fry. So why not prepare the preheated pan kind of thing? That you want to preheat the shingles, these tiles, and then you put some fish on it and it gets heated, or crack an egg on it. Why not? My God, what's the problem? What are you doing wrong? It's only a problem if it's new, that hasn't been used yet. And what's wrong if it's new? The top of the page. So we have two versions over here, what Rabbi Yochanan said. Some say that the problem is because the butkan. Rashi says that it might crack. The first time you're using it, so it might just crack and it's not useful. So what's the problem? So it comes out, Rashi says that you worked for nothing. You didn't do any malacha, but you were torech to heat up these tiles, and then it's not going to be useful. So you worked for nothing. We don't want you to work for nothing. So use old tiles and use something that's already been tempered already, and it's not a shash that it's going to break. That's the first shot. And some say the reason is lechosman would be like tempered, like to strengthen. That when you make have these shingles, and not metal here, we're talking about earthenware, shingle kind of thing. But the fact that you heat it up, that strengthens it, and that's like making a kli. So even though your real purpose is in order to fry on it, you want to be sola on it, to roast on it. But since Lamaisi, you're strengthening the kli, since it's new, then it's asa. So the Gemara says that both
You're not thinking about them.
But you're doing it. You call either you are thinking about it also, because the first time you do want it to be strengthened, or subsequation. So even if it's not Hashem Miskav subsequation is also say not allowed to.
That's where Chisum comes from.
Who talks about chisum? Where's the word chisum come from? Chisun. They use the word chisun, but it could be similar. It could be as similar. Here the Shoresh is chosem. They talk about this also. Tempered glass, things like that. They call this now. They call it also the same word nowadays. So it comes out just that the Gemara said everyone agrees it's only us if it's a new one. If it's an old one, you're allowed to heat it up. The only problem is when it's a new one. What's the problem? Either because it's going to crack and it comes out that you were terech for nothing, or because you're strengthening it and it's making a kli. Tanan Nasam. The Gemara has an issue that's going to try to bring a ride from what we just spoke about. Tanan Nasam. A Mishnah Chulin, a left field subject, nothing to do with us at all. The Rasa or Shetofa Bakosa Lo Shavitsasa Pema Mufarkeses. It's talking about Hilchas Trefus, that if you had a bird, a chicken, whatever it is, and somebody stepped on it, or it was banged against the wall, or an animal crushed it, and it's still Mufarkeses, it's still jumping around, so it's still alive, and you want to shecht it, you want to know is it a treif or not. So the luck is you have to wait 24 hours before you shecht it. If you didn't wait 24 hours, even if you shecht it right away, and even if Rashi says, even if you opened it up, you checked all the treifas, you don't see anything wrong, that's a treifa. And Rashi brings down it's called Risik Evorim. One of the treifas is called that something was banged about, and the Evorim might have been all crushed up, even though nothing's not crushed. The word crushed is the wrong word. Nothing's crushed. Just the fact that it was banged around, it's a treifa. If you didn't wait 24 hours, risuk like resik and vaniot. So risuk Evorim means that if it's banged up, even if nothing broke or anything, it's still a treifa. You have to wait 24 hours. If you wait 24 hours, that lives, then it's not a treifa. But the Gemara does say one more. Say, hey, V'shas and Meisleis, you wait 24 hours, V'shachtak Shev. But if you didn't wait 24 hours, it's a treifa. Now the Gemara says on that, that even after you waited 24 hours and you shechted it, you do have to, maybe things got banged up inside, so you have to open it up and check all the treifas. That means usually you don't have to check treifa. And Rashi brings out, even though we do check some of the treifas, like the lungs and things like that, that's a chumrah, and we check it because we do find problems, but you don't really have to, because as a chazak, a robe is not a treifa. But here, after it was banged up, you don't have that robe anymore. There's a big chance that it was a treifa. So you have to do two things. You have to wait 24 hours. If you didn't wait 24 hours, even if you check there's no treifa inside, you don't see anything crushed inside, but it's also a treifa. If you didn't wait 24 hours, even if you waited 24 hours, you also must check it min adin. It's not only a chumrah to check it, you must check the treifas inside. Fine, nice halacha by Hilchas Treifas. Now the Gemara comes back to Hilchas Yantif. Are you allowed to shech this bird on Yantif? Because there's a good chance that it's going to become a treifa. When you open it up, you can't check before. You have to check it, and then you open it up and see if it's a treifa. And the good chance it's a treifa because it was all banged up. So it could be that you shecht it for nothing. Because there's a problem that you might be doing malacha for nothing. So do we choshesh of the reis that there's a problem over here? The fact that there might be a treifa, are we choshesh for the problem? So what's the reis? That means a problem. A reis is a problem. The fact that are we choshesh that it's a treifa, and it comes out it is shechted for nothing. It won't be a treifa. That's why you're shechting it for. You hope that it's not a treifa, but a good chance it is a treifa. A regular bird yeshech, you have a chazaka, a rove, that is rove, maybe it's not treifas. Even if we're going to check it, okay, we're doing a chumrah to check it, but you get a lot of rely adin on the rove that it's not a treifa. But over here, there's no rove anymore because it was banged up. So what's he going to do? He's going to go back to our sugya. It's going to be just a preview that the Gemara is going to say, just like on the top line it says that there is a chash that if you're using these new tiles and a chash that it might break, so you would it's only tircha and wachoshes. Don't do it because it might come out that it's going to break and you work for nothing. So don't do it. So too, Kal v'chomer, if there is a chash, you did shchita not for nothing on Yantiv, so don't do it. That's what the Gemara's right is going to be. That was what Rabbi Yirmiyah asked Zera. Amalei, so Rabbi Zera said, Tanina, there's a Mishnah, our Mishnah, with Rabbi Yochanan's explanation. It says in our Mishnah, Ein Rav L'Nesar from Lislos Behen. You're not allowed to heat up these shingles in order to roast on them. Favin and Bo, we asked on it, why not? My cover, what are you doing wrong? From Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, it's new, and therefore that you have to check, it needs to be checked. It means that the first time you use it, it might break. So what do we see? That since you choshish that it might break, don't do it on Yantif. So do it. Since you choshish that it's a treifa, and it comes out, you checked it for nothing, so don't do it. So you shouldn't do it. But Rabbi Yirmiyah said, that's not so simple. It depends on the two versions of Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei, Anan B'nei Shesarach L'chosman Masnin Allah. Means it depends on these two pshatim. You say on the top line. If you say the pshat is Sarach Levatkan, so then you're right. Then you have a raya that you choshish that it might not work out, then you work for nothing, so don't do it. You're right. But according to the second pshat, Sarach L'chosman, then the pshat is because you're making a kli out of it. It's not a question of a suffix. It means that when you're doing the heating, you're strengthening the kli, you're making a tikkun kli. That's why it's us. So you have no raya to the whole issue. It's not talking about a chash, maybe something's going to go wrong and you work for nothing. So according to that, there'd be no raya. So the Gemara doesn't bring a raya. After if you hold the vodkan, then you have a raya, not allowed to do it. If you hold the chosman, so then we don't know. Then we don't know anything about it. The post can talk about halacha, the Mechaber's Mekel, and the Mishnah Berurah on those that are machmir. Are you allowed to shech a bird which is a chash treifa or something like that? Are you allowed to shech an yantif, or are you choshish that maybe it's a treifa and you're going to shech for nothing? Again, the practical application doesn't happen today. Nobody shechting an yantif, but all the halachas are true, but people don't do it nowadays. So that was the sugya. The Gemara is continuing still with the same issue about the chosman and the botkan, these two issues. Tanya, we learned in the brisa on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to cook, you're not allowed to make a fire. On Yantiv, you are allowed to. Echad maybe as a or, vechad maybe as a eitzim, vechad chofes as a kedera, vechad maybe as a mayim. And over here, you can stick in, vechad maybe as a basar, stick in over here. Vechad knows in the socha tavlin, vechad megis kulin chayavin. That people, many people, they joined in cooking the food, so it could be everyone's chayiv. One person, he brought the fire. Either he made the fire, or even if Rashi says, even if he brought the fire, also he's chayiv, because as you walk with the coals, so it also bellows, the wind also brings up the fire, so you're making the fire. On Shabbos, you're making a fire. Echad maybe a seitzim, the other person put the wood into the fire, so he's burning. He's putting fuel into the fire. Echad shofes is like there. Somebody put the pot onto the fire. That's also chayiv. That's going to be these words are going to be the Gemara's focus. What's wrong with the person who just puts the empty pot onto the fire? That's going to that's okay with this. That's going to be the issue of the Gemara. Right, yes. So it says one person brought a fire, he's chayiv. Another person brought the wood onto the fire, he's chayiv. Another person put a pot onto the fire, he's chayiv. Maybe as a man. Another person poured the water into the pot, he's chayiv because he's cooking the water. Sticking over here, someone put in the basar, he put in the meat, he's chayiv because he's cooking the meat. Echad knows in the tavlin, somebody put in the spices, he's chayiv. Echad making somebody stirring, kula chayavin because everybody cooked. Everything's good.
What started the problem? Why are you not allowed to?
They're cooking on Shabbos. Someone's cooking on Shabbos. Shabbos. So one brings the fire, one brings the wood, one puts the pot on, one puts the water, one is the meat, one is the spices, one is the stirred. Everyone's chayiv. The Gemara Sakasha about Tanya Achron Chayiv V'Kulam Paturim. Another Brisa seems to say differently that only the last one is Chayiv. So the Gemara says it depends when the fire. The case we had, the fire was the first. Everyone's Chayiv because everyone's putting things on the fire. But you're right. If the fire would be the last, so then everyone's buttered because they didn't do anything. If they got the wood and the pot and the meat and the water and the spices and then someone brings the fire, he's the one who did everything. So that's Pashat. Lo Kasha Hadaisi or Ba'ikor Hadaisi or Basov. If the fire was brought in the beginning, that's our Brisa. Everyone's Chayiv. And if the fire was brought at the end, then only he's chayiv. Simple. But tomorrow's focus is going to be the person who put the pot onto the fire. What did he do? Empty pot. What did he do? The person who put the fire, the one who made the wood, all of them fine. And the one who put the water into the pot and the meat and the spices and the stir, everything's good. But the person who put an empty pot onto the fire, what did he do wrong? Everyone did something. Allah Shofar says there, my covered. What the person who put an empty pot on the fire, what did he do? So the Gemara goes back to us here. Like Chaim David said, it's a new pot. It's the same problem as our Mishnah. According to the Pshat of Chasima, the fact that you're strengthening the pot. So if it's a new pot, the first time you put it onto the fire, so it strengthens it. So you're making a tikkun kli, and that's chayiv also. That's chayiv for making a kli on Shabbos. Okay. It depends. It depends. Nowadays, you have to ask the manufacturer. You have to ask the manufacturer nowadays if it does anything for it. Usually, I imagine that our kalim already they're made and doesn't help anymore. The stainless steel is not going to make a difference if you put it onto the fire or not. So it depends on the product. If you have some kind of earthenware or something like that that does get tempered from the first time you use it, then in a chanami might be such a thing. But I don't think we have such kalim nowadays. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, more halachas about the oven. Tana Rabbanan, Tana Vikiraim Chadashim, Arein Kikola Kalim, Manitolan Buchasa. So, an oven is oven muktzah on Yantif. So, on Yantif, for sure not. You're allowed to use an oven. What's the problem? If you have a port, you're allowed to use an oven. So, we're not talking about electric things and things like that, but if you have an oven in those days that you would put wood and coals and bring the fire, so you're allowed to do that. That's what Yantif is all about. You shecht and you bake and you cook. So you're allowed to do that. But Rashi says there's so much Shabbos, and Shabbos is oven muktzah on Shabbos. So we say for sure yes, and you're not allowed to use oven. So Rashi says yes, it is, but it's a klisha malachto liser that you're allowed to use. You're allowed to use it. Let's say it's gufo. You want to put something inside the oven. I it's like other kelim that you're allowed to move, even though it's klisha malachto liser, but it's mutter l'tzarech gufo makomo. So it's a kli on Shabbos. The rest of the Rashi talks about Yantiv, but Rashi seems to say that the first line is talking about on Shabbos, because on Yantiv it wouldn't make sense, because of course it's mutter. It's a kli malachto letter on Yantiv. You're allowed to use oven. Okay, back now into Yantiv. Avol lein sachan osam shemen ve'ein tashin osam b'matlis ve'ein b'figin osam b'sonon kedei l'chasman. So Rashi says that all these things are talking about tikkun. It's fixing up the oven. So you're not allowed to smear it with oil. The fact that you smear the oven with oil, that's some kind of a tikkun, that it makes the oven better. Ain't touching those on the matas. You can't, Rashi says it means to rub. You can't rub the oven with some kind of a rag. Also, I guess that's some kind of a tikkun after you made, maybe after you have the oven. I don't know if it's new or not at this point, but you wouldn't be allowed. It does say, it says new one. This is all talking about a new oven. Rashi says when it says new, the point is that even if it's new, and an old one also, but if issue about the oil and touching those in the mouth, maybe it's not to buy a new one. And when you first get it, you have to make it, you have to smear it with oil and smear it. So these things are also Rashi is tikkun kli. Also, that you're not allowed to cool it off. You have the heated up the oven, whatever, with logs, you heat it up, you heated it up, and now you want to cool it down with cold water in order to temper the oven. The fact that it was first hot and then you put cold into it, so it's going to strengthen the oven, that you're not allowed to do because you're making a kli. The same thing we said a few times, that l'chasman is asa. So too, this oven, which is heated up, a new one, which is heated up, and then you cool it down with water, also you're not allowed to do it on Yantif. But here it says, if the reason that you're cooling it down is because you want to bake, that the oven is too hot. I've seen this by the matzah bakery. After they heat up the oven very much for many hours, then they want to use it for matzahs. First, they hose it down. They put a spritz. It looks like steam's coming out. Really, it's water coming out, but it turns into steam right away because it's too hot. So they have to cool it down. Then you're allowed to do it and it seems that even if you're also fixing up the oven at the same time, it is mutter. The Taisus talks about it before. We said that you're not allowed to. On the top line, it said that l'chasman is us, even though you're doing it to be tzola. Like Chaim David said, your purpose is to be chosen, to be tzola. But since it's getting echsam at the same time, it's us psik ratio. So you must hear that it's not psik ratio or something like that. That this is different. What Taisus says here doing with water. They just were heating it up. Whatever the echatim says. But here it says that you're allowed to use it to bake. And even
third wide line in Rashi says v'choshesh shalot tisarif hapas mutter.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, good. Okay. So the question was that even though over here you're Also fixing up you're fixing up the oven is getting fixed up. And on top line, we said that you're not allowed to do it even though your purpose is to bake. So Tyson says that there's a psik it's not a psik but the halachas are good, that you're not allowed to do a tikkun kli on Yantif. And the whole Mishnah, the Gemara that brought in this issue about chasima and bedika, the Gemara is dealing with these two tzadim. One is that it might break and you did it for nothing, and the other issue is that you're doing a tikkun kli by tempering it.
The Gemara says kirat
Ton of a kirayim.
is similar to kalim, meaning that it's a sort to do for when it's new. You know, you can't use it first time.
Here it says that you are allowed to.
Yeah, but I thought like kalim, we said kalim are problematic. That they also on kalim, kalim are permitted the first time, but not kirayim.
Over there said that by this shingles over there said heating it up the first time is the chosman. Here it doesn't sound like heating it up alone is does the chasima. That's from the facts. You have to just here it says that you're allowed to. It doesn't say that you're not allowed to bake in it. So you have to say that different techetim said the one is going to be chasima. Here it says it's only considered chasima that after you heat it up, then you cool it down. That's the issue. And even that you're allowed to do if your intention is to bake, you're allowed to do even though agav it might happen. Taisha says it's not for sure going to happen. It's not a so it's nothing. Okay, the next issue is about when you want to shecht and everything and you're doing all this on Yantif. So you have hairs that you want to get rid of the hairs. That's part of the process that you take off the hairs. Again, we don't do this nowadays, but that's whatever it is. If it's going to be a chicken, if you can eat the head of the chicken or whatever, plucking it. Okay, so here it talks about hairs of probably it's talking about an animal. I talk about an animal over here, and it's talking about the head and the feet that you do take off the hairs. Then goes in osan b'misparim. So it talks all different kinds of ways of removing the hair of the animal that's already dead that you want to eat, and you have to get rid of the hair. So one way is to put it into boiling water. Molgin, that means Rashi's baros, and you put it into boiling water and the hair comes off. That's permissible. Also, Mahav ben Osan boy, you're allowed to singe it off with fire, also permissible. You're doing all this for Ochel Nefesh, so you're allowed to remove the hair either by boiling it or by singeing it. This is like a chemical process that you do in order to remove the hair that you're not allowed to do. Charsis, they say some kind of a clay, Adama, also some kind of a clay, Sid, lime, so that you're not allowed to do. Why not? You're also doing it for Ochel Nefesh. What's the difference if you're burning it off or you use this chemical? So Rashi says because this is the way that the tanners do it. This is Derech Abdanin, so it looks like you're tanning. And it's going to be only Rabbanan because you're not doing it for that purpose. You're doing it for the purpose of eating, but it looks like Abdanim, so don't do it the way that looks like professional way of doing it for a different malacha. And also don't cut it with scissors. And goes in osan b'misparayim. So here Rashi says not because the tanners do it that way, they don't bother cutting it with scissors, but it looks like you want to hear, and that might be an issue of gozes. And the same way you're not allowed to shear a sheep for this wool, you wouldn't be allowed to shear the animal for his hair. And it looks like you want it, or else you don't do it with scissors usually.
Because it looks like shearing a sheep. Is that right?
Right. And so therefore do it in the way that everyone knows it's done, the way it's done in the kitchen. Either boil it off or singe it off. Good. The next halacha. Yes, please.
The animal is skinned before you cook it, isn't it?
So either it could be that some hairs are there even afterwards, or there might be some kind of a skins that maybe they're soft and you eat it with the skin. It could be that the head, it says the rosh and the reglaim, so it could be that it's very soft. I think that maybe it is so. I'm not sure.
So you cook it with the skin? Okay, maybe. Okay.
Could be eating with the skin. Could be that these skin, the hide, the skin on the head maybe is different. They roasted it with the head. I'm not familiar, but you find other Gemaras where it talks about this, the hair removal. So it must be that sometimes they had to do it in order to eat it. Okay, nice point. Then goes in as a yorak with the spore shalom. So Rashi says that this is a vegetable, of course, that's been detached from the ground. So you're not allowed to detach from the ground. But even after it's attached, you have some leaves that are spoiled leaves, rotten leaves, and you want to cut them away, which all you're allowed to do. But don't use the regular scissors that you would use to cut it off the ground. So you have a certain kind of a scissors that's used to separate the cucumbers, whatever it might be, the lettuce from the ground. Don't continue don't use that kind of a scissors for trimming the vegetable after it's been detached. Why not? Because people will think that you just finished using it in the field. How come you have that scissors at home when you want to trim the lettuce? You don't use this professional tool for cutting it off the ground. So the fact that you're using that kind of a scissors, it looks suspicious, so don't use it.
That's what it's a sporet shalom.
So Rashi says like misparayim shalom. Rashi says the sporet usually means the hair cutting. They're cutting, but here Rashi seems to say the same word as a misparayim. Don't use the professional scissors that's used to cut it off the ground, even though that's not what you're doing. You're just trimming it after it's already detached. People will think that you just finished cutting it off the ground. Doesn't look good, so don't use that on Yantif. Avol, all these were kinds of yisum, we said. Avol metaktenes sekundus vesakavios. Rashi says it's kind of vegetables that are difficult to prepare. Interesting, there's a marmokum, there's a reference to a medrash on the pasuk last week's parsha, because for that tatzmiach. It says that one of the klolos tell the Marishan that it's going to be thorns growing. So the medrash says it's these kind of foods, kundus and kavios. It seems like they're very thorny, even though it's a food. You might say something like a sabra. I'm not sure this as an example. Artichokes, things that might have difficulty to prepare because they're also considered kos for dar. But anyway, Rashi says that since it's difficult to prepare, you might think it's also anyantif, too much tircha, even though it's ochel nefesh. Says no, that since it's ochel nefesh, you're allowed to do it. Umasikin v'ofen v'porni. A porni is the same word as a furnace. That's we say a pay because it's in Hebrew that a pay changes to a pay. But a porni is a furnace, so it's a big oven, and you're allowed to use it. Rashi says even though it's very big and industrial-like, you might think that it's too much tircha and yantif. No, if you need it to have a big oven, you're allowed to use a big oven to heat it up and to bake with it. You might think it's too much tircha. So using something industrial-like, or maybe it looks to the whole, you're allowed to use a big furnace. Like in a bakery, let's say you got to go to the bakery oven and use a big furnace. It's mutter and yantif for food. Shabbos is a kind of urn that's used for water, and it's very intense heat. Also, it's very similar to the porni. It's something that's more intense, and you might think there's too much tircha to heat it up on yantif. Also, it's mutter. But the last thing is, don't use a new furnace for the first time because it might break. What's wrong if it breaks? It might break the first time.
You'll fix it.
So they don't say you're going to fix it, but Rashi says the pshat is similar to the beginning of the daf, like Botkin. That's if you chosh something's going to break, so then you did work for nothing. The fact that you heated up the oven and then it's going to break is similar to the tile that we say don't use. There's another pshat here. The Rambam says that you might not have bread. That we're interested, you should have bread. Here you're going to relying on this kind of furnace, and this big furnace. The first time you use it, there's a good chance that it might break, and then you're not going to have any. You're not going to have any oven. So get another oven that's not going to break, and make sure you have bread for yantif. You see sometimes in the Masechta the Chazal were concerned you should have good meat, you should have good bread. So that's the Rambam's shot over here that you might not have simchas yantif if you're going to have a broken oven. Okay, Tan Rabbanan. Nothing's about.
Just like Shabbos, right?
Yes. Tan Rabbanan. Ein novchen b'mapuach. You shouldn't use a bellows. The bellows is something that's used to get the fire going to make a lot of beer. That's something that's usually used not in the bakery, in the kitchen. That's usually something used by umnim craftsmen that they make, say, a blacksmith, a silversmith. They have a mapuach. So don't use these professional tools. It doesn't look good for yantif. You could blow with some kind of a straw that if you do need to bellow the fire, so use a straw. That's not a professional tool. That's something that you use in the kitchen. That's okay. So you're not allowed to make the spit or to sharpen it, because even though you're allowed to do ochel nefesh, but you're not allowed to make a kli. Rashi points out that this seems to be a machlokis because of Yehuda that holds machshir ochel nefesh is mutter. Not only the ochel nefesh, even the preparation. He did say that you're allowed to prepare the kelim sometimes. So Rashi says either it's not according to Yehuda, but then Rashi says even according to Yehuda, he only permits it if you couldn't have done it before yantif, like it broke on yantif. But if it broke before yantif and you could have done it before, he's not matir. So even if you hold machshir ochel nefesh is mutter, that's only if it was not possible to do it before yantif. This is very similar to the mission we had that you're not allowed to cut a piece of piece of cheres, or cut a piece of paper in order to use it as a tray when you're roasting the fish that it shouldn't burn. So because tikkun mana, so too you're not allowed to break open a bamboo stick, some kind of a kana, in order to use it as a tray to roast something on that it shouldn't burn. So you're not allowed to do that. Also tikkun mana, you're making a kli, you're making a tray. The last thing, you are allowed to crack open nuts with a rag. What do you do? So if you have a nutcracker, fine, or you do it by your hands. But they will take a rag and bang it with the rag, and the nut will crack inside. It's very nice. The problem is maybe the rag is going to tear. You're not choshesh, maybe it's going to tear. Why not? So Vega says over here, because even if it tears, it's a davar shem v'skaven, and it's not a psik ratio. And you can add on also to that even if it tears, it's destructive. I didn't do anything. It wasn't a tikkun at all. So even if it tears, it's not a problem. Rashi says that the reason why it's not a problem is because it's not a almanas lit for. You're not doing it for the purpose of sewing. Almanas lit for. It's only if you had. But Rav Kega says the horror is simpler that would be Yisra Rabbanan still. But here, davar shem v'skaven, it's not a psik ratio. So that's the reason why it's mutter. And I would add on also that it's destructive. Nothing good was created about it. So you're surely allowed to bang it, even though it might happen that it's going to tear. Okay, so all that is good. All Allah is about baking and ovens, and you're not allowed to be chosem, you're not allowed to make a tempering of a kli because it's a gemar kli. And
I didn't see the very beginning. Going back. back. I think. Yeah, and no, before that, it was, two was the beginning of the two, then two.
Further?
Nothing got. There's two words which I didn't understand. No. that's
Okay,
not-
find it later. We're happy to, whatever.
There we have of May, number one line up. No, okay.
Okay, good. Okay. The next sugya is the rest of the parak is gonna be mostly about Trumas and Maestros. Back to Ilchas Ram, and whenever the Gemara has the opportunity to do so, it talks a lot about it because this I heard from Rabbi Mendel Kaplan, my Rebbe, that a lot of times in Taurus and Zrom that there's not Gemara on it, no Bavli on it. So when the Gemara has an opportunity, so it jumps on it and it elaborates a lot. So that's going to happen in our sugi also. But the Mishnah alone is pretty simple. The Mishnah is talking about Azmana. We had a long time ago about pigeons that you're not sure which pigeon you want to eat, so you have to prepare before Yontif and say, I want to eat this one. And Shammai says you even have to pick it up and say, this is the one that I want to eat. And that's the issue called Hazmana. That's something which you're going to eat on Yontif. You have to prepare and say, I want to eat it, or else it's not prepared. The pigeons are not all used to eat. Some of them you keep in order to keep the colony going. So you have to say that you want to eat them. Here also, this Mishnah is talking about food, not a pigeon, somewhat food, and it's food which is not always ready to eat. Rashi gives us an example that we spoke about a couple of pages ago, that if you take grapes and you put it to make raisins, so there's a intermediate stage that's not edible. It becomes like a mushy grape and mushy fig, and they're not, it's not a grape and it's not a raisin, so it's not edible. So at that stage, when it's semi ready, so it's not considered food unless you say that I want to eat it. You have to do azmana. You have to say, I want it to be food. So that's what our mission is going to talk about. And the main issue is going to be, you have to designate beforehand which ones you want to eat. You have, let's say, with 100 kilo of grapes. You're not going to eat 100 kilo of grapes on Yantif. So you want to say, I'm going to eat some of them. So you have to be masbin which ones you want to eat. So we had an issue called Yesh Beira, Ein Beira. What?
Just within this box, there's 20 boxes. I want to eat from this box.
Not from this box. You have to say which ones. So that's going to be the issue. The issue is you have to specify which ones you want to eat. Not the ones that you're going to eat, not the ones that you're going to eat, the double of what you're going to eat, because you're not going to eat all of that. You have to maybe specify which ones you want to eat. Or maybe you could say, I'm going to eat something here. I'm going to eat something from around here. And that, the Gemara is going to, Rashi says the issue is because of Breira. What does Breira mean? Can I do an act today and not decide what the definition of the act is until tomorrow? We had a lot of cases about Erevin like that, different kinds of cases of Breira. So here the case is going to be that if I'm going to say that I'm going to eat something here, you have 100 kilo, I say I'm going to eat something over here. Or as Chaim David said, this box, but you're not going to eat the whole box either. It's not good enough. Well, you have to specify which ones I'm going to eat. If you hold Yesh Breira, then I can say I'm being Masbin, something over here. I'll tell you tomorrow which ones I meant to be Masbin. Tomorrow when I come eating, these are the ones that I meant yesterday. That's if you hold Yesh Breira. If you hold Ein Breira, so then you can't do that, and you have to specify before Yom Tov which ones you want to eat exactly.
How did you wait to conclude last time? You remember?
So we hold the Rabban and Yesh Breira. It is only Yisra Rabbanan over here. The Chorah, the only thing of Muktzah. So then you would hold your, Yesh Breira means that you could decide tomorrow what you meant yesterday. So
tomorrow.
yeah, so this is one shot in the Mishnah. Means the Mishnah doesn't really say what the Machlokes is. Rashi knows Yesh Breira, Ein Breira. There are other possibilities also. Fine, but let's leave it at that. But the main issue of the Mishnah is about doing Hazmana. But the scenario that the Mishnah tells us is going to be the main sugya of the Gemara, and we'll see what that's all about. The Mishnah tells us it's talking about on the year of Shemitah. On the year of Shemitah, let's see the words of the Mishnah now. Vodam Rabbi Lezer said another kula. Before he said a kula before about gathering wood from the chatzar. Now he says another kula. Omer Adam ala muksa erev. Next line, Amud Beis. Erev Shabbos b'Shviyos. Va'omer mikana ani ochel amocha. V'chachamim omer ma'ashi yirsham v'yom mikan b'ad kan. He goes to his muksa. What's a muksa? Muksa is a place where you designated. Sometimes we had it like it's a yard where you put logs and things that you would use for building materials. Here, the muksa is going to be something where you designated to put your grapes that you want to change into raisins. You have grapes and figs over there, and has to dry in the sun. So you leave it there and you put it out. It's out of your useful. You're not using it over there. You have to wait until it dries. So you put it into the muksa. The muksa might be called something that you set aside. It's set aside now. It's not for use until it dries out. And it says here, it's talking about Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov for our purposes, and you want to be able to eat it on Yom Tov. Shviyos. Shviyos means the year of Shemitah, and that's like a riddle. Why are we talking about Shemitah for? Makara. What happened that is you have to say so much Shemitah. So we'll see that in a minute. But let's get to the main point of the Mishnah. Someplace here, someplace of this food I'm going to use tomorrow. There's grapes and figs that are semi-dried. They're not everybody would want to eat it, but he does want to eat some, so he doesn't have to say specifically which ones he wants. He could do asmana klolit, he could do a general kind of asmana, something over here I want, and tomorrow I'm going to decide which one I want to eat. Until he marks off and says from here to here, this is what I want to eat. He has to specify what he wants to eat. That's the end of the Mishnah, and it's really the end of the parak, and in the Mishnah at least. And Rashi tells us the machlokas is yesh be'er and be'er. Rashi, the other Rishonim have different shaftim than Rashi, but just to see the Rashi, Sagi Bachi the yesh be'er, and Rashi Yisham ain't be'er. He says machlokas between Abu Lezer and Rabbanan is if you're be'er or not. That according to Abu Lezer,
means
and
that
you can't decide. You can't decide tomorrow what you meant today. Decide today what you want. You can't decide later what I meant yesterday. So the according to Rabbanan ain't be'er. So you can't say that I want to eat something over here from this 20 kilo, and I'll tell you tomorrow what. No, tell us right now what you want. And according to Abu Lezer, you could decide tomorrow. So just say, I want to eat something here. If you didn't say that, even said then it's no bravery. You didn't even say you want to be masbin anything. But if you said in general, mikan yochel amokar, someplace from these 20, 30 kilo, 100 kilo, I want to eat something. And tomorrow I'll tell you what I meant. And then tomorrow he comes and says, I want this 1 kilo. This is what I want. That's what I meant yesterday. So that's machlokas of the Mishnah. Yesh be'er, ain't be'er. According to this Shrav Rashi, since we hold yesh be'er with Rabbanan, so you could do like Abu Lezer, mikan yochel amokar is good enough. So that's the Mishnah, and there's no Gemara on it. What's the Gemara they're going to talk about? The Gemara is going to talk about Erev Shabbos B'Shviyos. What's that all about Shemitah over here? So Rashi says that there's a side issue that has nothing to do with the real issue of the Mishnah, but it's a side issue that these grapes and figs, that they're in the stage of getting dried out, the Pasha says they were not mu'usar, they were not tied. Because usually you're supposed to only tie it after Gemar Malacha. You're not supposed to. You're not supposed to tie something before it was finished, the process, whatever you want to do with it. If you want to have plain grapes or plain figs, fine. But if you want to make dry raisins out of it, you want to make dried figs out of it, so then wait until it's already dried. So this muktzah, which is not yet finished the process, the Pasha says he didn't take off Maisa yet. So this person that comes and he's going to be Mazman, even if he does a good asmana, but then he comes tomorrow and he wants to eat it, it's not mu'usar. It's not tied. So how could he eat it? So the Mishnah, that's the Mishnah's problem. That's the Mishnah, like just in the scenario, just to get the case straight. The Mishnah had to give a case that you're not chayv Tumas and Maisros, because if you're chayv Tumas and Maisros, so then it's tevel. Then tomorrow you come to eat it, even if you did asmana, but you didn't take off Tumas and Maisros. So the Mishnah says, I'll give you an eitzah. It's the year of Shemitah. The scenario is the year of Shemitah. On the year of Shemitah, there is no Tumas and Maisros. This year, there's no Trumas and Maisros. Things that are going to go and have Kedusha Shvius, there's no Allah of Trumas and Maisros because it's the year of Shvius. Rashi brings a Mechilta, they bring it Russia. There's no dinner Trumas and Maisros on the year of Shvius. So that's all the Gemara, that's all the Mishnah meant. Since it wanted to give us an area where there's no Chiv of Trumas and Maisros, so it said Shvius, on the year of Shemitah, there's no Trumas and Maisros. Rashi says the Mishnah could have spoken about a case where you took off Maisa, but it didn't want to. Because usually you're not supposed to be Maaseh before Gemar Malacha, before you finished, and the process is not finished yet, because if the process will be finished, so then it wouldn't have to have any asmanas ready to eat. So it must be that it's not yet ready to eat. It's like semi chazi v'lo chazi. So therefore, it's not yet nigma malachto, and pashas you didn't take off ma'aser. So if you didn't take off ma'aser, so then you're not going to be able to eat it the next day because it's not musar, and you're not allowed to be maser on Shabbos. So the Mishnah says it's about the year of Shemitah. Okay, that's a scenario in order to give us a possible case where it's possible to eat it on Shabbos, and the only problem is asmana. Okay, so if we're good with that, the rest of the Gemara is just going to talk about the issue of Trumas and Maisros. So if that's good, no problems with that, everybody's good with all that. So we start the Gemara. Tanana Sama, Mishnah and Maisros. Tinoiko shetamlu b'teinim erev Shabbos, v'shakku v'lo Isru, l'motzai Shabbos, lo yochlu elam kein Isru. So there's a law about things that were not tied, that you're not allowed to eat it without tithing. But there's a thing called achilas arad, that a casual eating, not a established, fixed, official, formal eating. So that's called achilas arai. Achilas kava means a formal meal, and achilas arai means a snack, something like a snack. So the halach is that even before things were tied, you are allowed to eat achilas arai. But here the case is that Shabbos, it says here that Shabbos is not considered achilas arai. That the food of Shabbos is all considered a formal eating. There's a mispatit, the kavasal of Shabbos, only the Gemara is going to say soon, and therefore the eating of Shabbos is the food of Shabbos is considered a kviyas. Even a snack on Shabbos is considered a formal eating, and therefore, even though you would be allowed to eat a snack of tevel on the weekday, but on Shabbos you're not allowed to. Shabbos is tirachilas keva. Maybe I said the word tevel, maybe that was the wrong word to use. Things that were not musar. So you at a certain point, there's going to be a point that you're not allowed to eat even achilas arai. But that things that are koveya, once it comes into the house, we have spinei abayas. We're going to see the sugi. That's going to be our sugi now. But Here it says that one of the places that you're not allowed to eat achilas aretz on Shabbos. Tanan Nasam, we learned the Mishnah in Maestros, Tinokas. Rashi says why it talks about children, even children. Tinokas shetam luteinim erev Shabbos. The children, they put aside figs from erev Shabbos that they want to eat it on Shabbos. They designated food for Shabbos, and they forgot to take off Maisa. The shakul v'lo isru. So first of all, you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos because it wasn't Musar. And even the Motzai Shabbos lo yochel, even on Motzai you're not allowed to eat it. Once it was designated for Shabbos, the Shabbos food, so that means that it becomes nikva, it becomes a formal meal, and this formal meal you're not allowed to eat even at Motzai Shabbos either. So that's called, in other words, we're going to call that, the formula for that is going to be that Shabbos kavas lamaisa. Shabbos makes that the eating is considered a formal meal, and you're not allowed to eat it without tithing. Fine, we know the new halacha that Shabbos is kaveh lamaisa. Even though you're allowed to eat sometimes achilas arai from things that were not tithe, but Shabbos eating is considered formal, and even after Shabbos also, it says here, even after Shabbos, the food which is designated for Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat after Shabbos also until you tithe. Very nice. A new halacha, Shabbos kavas lamaisa. Fine. Tananam, you know the Mishnah. This Mishnah is going to say that chatzar kavas lamaisa, chatzar and a bias. Also, if it comes into the chatzar, it's also considered a kviyas already. If you're eating in the field, you want to go to the field, then you have things that were not tied, you're allowed to eat without maisa. But once it came into the chatzar, then the chatzar is kavas lamaisa, and you're not allowed to eat in the chatzar or the house without taking off maisa. But this Mishnah is going to say that it's only once it was nigma malachto. After the process is completely finished, and then it came into the chatzar, then you wouldn't be allowed to eat it achilas arai. But if it was not yet finished, it was not nigma malachto, the process was not yet finished, for whatever purpose you want to do with it, like we're going to say you want to have dried figs, so then till it's dried, it's considered no nigma malachto. So this Mishnah is going to say that a chatzar is not koveya from maisa on a davar shalom nigma malachto. Even though a chatzar is koveya, if once it comes into the chatzar, you're not allowed to eat it outright. That's only if it was already finished the process, nigma malachto. But if it was unfinished, so then you would allow to still be eat a achilas arai in the chatzar. That's what the Mishnah says over here. Hamavir te'enim v'chatzero liktzos. A person who passed through figs through his courtyard in order to make kitzios. Kitzios will mean dry figs. He wants to dry the figs. So since he decided to make dry figs out of it, so it's not yet finished the process. Lo nigra malachto. So he passed it through his chatzar. So the halach is, even though chatzar is kaveh l'maiser, v'anavu b'nei beso ochlan lehen arai upturin, that they still are allowed to eat from it. His family, himself also, is allowed to eat from it arai. It's still part of her meiser. And the chiddush is, even though chatzar kaveh l'maiser, that's only when it was nigma malachto. But over here, that it wasn't nigma malachto, you are allowed to eat from it. So we had two halachas. One was that Shabbos is kaveh l'maiser, and one is that the chatzar is kaveh l'maiser. But by the case of chatzar, the Mishnah says that's only if it was nigma malachto, only if the process of the food was finished already. But if it was unfinished, then the chatzar is not kaveh l'maiser. The second verse talks about you made kitzios. You want to make dried figs. The first case spoke about ta'inin. They just wanted to eat fresh figs. So that was nigma malachto. So the case where it told us that Shabbos is kaveh l'maiser, it told us a case of nigma malachto. It didn't tell us a case of lo nigma malachto. So now the Gemara is going to put these two dinim together. And a simple question: how does this affect the Shabbos? We know Shabbos is kaveh l'maiser. We know chatzar is kaveh l'maiser. The chatzar we said that it's not kaveh l'maiser if it was not nigma malachto. How about Shabbos? Is Shabbos the same level? Or maybe Shabbos is more homer, and maybe Shabbos is kaveh l'maiser, even if it's no nigma malachto. Even if you have undried figs, the figs that are still in the process of becoming dried, so it's no nigma malachto, and it came Shabbos, maybe Shabbos is more homer, and it's kaveh l'maiser, even if it's no nigma malachto, and you wouldn't be allowed to eat it without taking off meiser. That's
what's the svara by Shabbos being more chomer than a chatzar?
Because karoso Shabbos onig, that the eating of Shabbos is very formal, and it's so formal that even if you eat things that are not nigma malachto, it also makes it a achilas kava. Shabbos muktzah l'maisa. Is Shabbos able to be kovei muktzah? Muktzah means this place where you put the figs to become dried, so it's lo nigma malachto. As the Gemara explains, the davar shalom nigma malachto. Rashi says that this wasn't really, these four words are not words of the Gemara. It's an explanation that a muktzah, by definition, means that it's lo nigma malachto because it's put aside to dry the figs and the grapes into raisins and dried figs. So is Shabbos able to be kovei even that for meiser also? Because we said by a chatzar not. And maybe Shabbos is the same, or maybe Shabbos is even more chomer. Since the pasuk says that Shabbos is supposed to be a delight, that means that everything eaten on Shabbos is formal eating, because he's supposed to be eating delightful things on Shabbos. So the fact that you're eating on Shabbos is considered a kviyas, and even davar shalom nigma malachto. Or dilma, it's the same as chaser. The davar shnigma malachto kava, but davar shalom nigma malachto lo kava. It's not more than a chaser. Like let's take but only if it's already finished the process. Nigma malachto. Maybe Shabbos also is not more chomer. So
Rebbe, I don't hear this far. I'll tell you why. Because chatzar is a makom.
We'll just finish one time, and then we'll have time. Just finish it out because it's complex enough. So just to get one time through, and then we're happy to analyze more. So he told them Shabbos is more chomer. Amalei Shabbos kovas beimadavish nigma malachta beimadavish lo nigma malachta. That it is more chomer. He asked him a question. Is it more chomer? He said yes, it's more chomer. That even though chatzar is only kaveya afterwards nigma malachta, Shabbos is kaveya even though it's not nigma malachta. So if you have, even though the Mishnah spoke about figs and they want to eat fresh figs, even if it would be figs that are in the process of becoming dry and it's not yet dry, so as davar shalom nigma malachta, there's more svara to say that maybe the chatzar you see a chatzar is not kaveya. Shabbos also maybe not. No, Shabbos is more chomer and it's kaveya afilu b'davar shalom nigma malachta. Amalei, he told him maybe it's like a chatzar. Amalei v'em Shabbos don't be the chatzar. Maybe it's just like you find by chatzar that is kaveya, but only if it's nigma malachta. Maybe Shabbos is the same. Maybe it's the same level as chaser. That's only koveya if it's already finished the process. So he told them, this is the way it is. Amalei, we have a Masorah. That's how they explained it. That it means a Masorah. This is what our Chachamim taught us. It's a arranged teaching. That means this is how it's been taught to us. So he doesn't prove it. He just says that's the Masorah. And maybe they point out maybe it's not Lachal Moshe Messina, but it means that that's how we've learned from the early generations that Shabbos is more chomer than Chatzar. Chatzar is only kaveya if it's already finished the process of whatever you want to do to it, and Shabbos is more chomer. But Kavashal Shabbos oneg that even if it's a davar shalom nigma malachto, it's also you're not allowed to eat achila sarai. How does all this? What does all this have to do? It's very nice. We learned the mission too much nice in Maasros, a whole discussion. Very nice. What does that have to do with us? So. This is coming back to our Mishnah now, and I'll just try to say the preview before we see the Gemara inside, and then we'll see if it makes sense. The Gemara, the Mishnah is really talking about Azmana. All the Mishnah wants to tell you a din of Azmana, if you have kind of food that is not mamish ready to eat, and you want to eat it on Yontif, you have to prepare it and say, I want to eat it. And the Mishnah was saying you have to say specifically which ones you want to eat, because ain't brera, or you can say in general what you want to eat, something from here, and I'll decide tomorrow. That's called yesh, very nice. But the Mishnah was concerned there's a side problem, mamish a side problem, that we weren't master it yet, that this food is not yet tied because it's in the muktzah, you don't tie things before it's nigma malachta. So it's untied semi-mushy grapes, right? You have these grapes that are not yet semi-dried grapes, not yet raisins mamish. Some people will eat it, some people wouldn't, but you didn't tie it yet. And now this person says, I want to eat it. So he says, I'm going to eat this, either this specific bunch of grapes or someplace from here, he's masmin. But the problem is it wasn't tied. So tomorrow he comes to eat it. So very nice that he prepared it and he said, I want to eat it, but it's untied. You're not allowed to eat it. So because of that, the Mishnah said it's so much shvi, it's so much shmita. Shmita there's not too much of my, so everything's fine. And the Gemara is just going to ask, he could have found a much simpler scenario just to say a case where you could eat without tithing, because the halacha is that achilas are right. You're allowed to eat, even though it's chayiv in Maisa, you're not allowed to eat a davar shalom nigma malachta. You can't eat it achilas keva, you can't eat it a formal meal, but you could eat achilas aris. What's the problem? What's the problem? He'll eat it without tithing because you're allowed to eat achilas aris. It must be because it's Shabbos, Yontif, that this is tomorrow when he wants to eat it, it's Yontif and Shabbos, and then Shabbos is Koveya. That's why the Mishnah didn't have a scenario where we'll be able to eat it only if it's the year of Shemitah where there is no Trumas and Maasros. But the Gemara is going to ask, if we're touching now on our subject, if this thing is davar shalom nigma malachta, these figs and raisins that he has in his muktzah were not nigma malachta. And if you say that Shabbos is not Koveya, the davar shalom nigma malachta, so Shabbos doesn't make any problem. It doesn't make it that it's usher to eat it because you're allowed to eat it. The fact that the Mishnah couldn't find the scenario only on Shemitah and it didn't find the regular case of eating achilas arai, it must be because Shabbos is koveya afilu b'davar shalom nigma malachta. If Shabbos would not be koveya b'davar shalom nigma malachta, so the Mishnah could have stopped. Don't talk about Shvius. Talk about a regular year, the 6 years that there is Trumas and Maasros, but he's eating achilas arai, and it's not. And Shabbos is not koveya because it's davar shalom nigma malachta. The fact that the Mishnah couldn't find that case, it had to go to Shemitah, is because Shabbos is koveya afilu b'davar shalom nigma malachta. Does that make sense? Does anybody want to ask on that or hear it again? Or
well, I still want to ask on this far. I'll tell you why it bothers me.
Without asking. Oh, first, if it makes sense what I said. But before Nikasha, just if it makes sense what I said. So it was asked to repeat it again. So let's try again. The Mishnah throws in that it's the year of Shemitah, seemingly for no reason. What does that have to do with us? Talk about Azmana. The reason why it throws in Shemitah is because there's a side problem. Besides the whole issue about Hazmana, you have to have Hazmana in order to eat it on Yom Tov, on Shabbos, that it should be prepared for, it should be considered food, that it's a semi-dried grape, so it's not, it's a little mushy, and not everybody would want to eat it. You have to say, I want to eat it. Fine, that's the issue of the Mishnah. But there's a side issue that the Mishnah was concerned with, that it's not tied. This thing was not yet tied. So on Shabbos, you're not going to be able to eat it because it wasn't tied. That was the Mishnah's problem in the background. The back problem, and the Mishnah took care of it by saying that's the year of Shemitah. On Shemitah, there is no Trumas and Maasros. The Gemara is asking, it could have been a simpler scenario. Don't go to Shemitah once in 7 years. It could have been a regular Shabbos, any Shabbos of the whole year, and he's eating it, achilas arai. You're allowed to eat untied produce. If it didn't come in, if it wasn't Nigma Malachto, achilas arai. You're allowed to eat a snack of these figs. So what's the problem? Why is the Mishnah bringing in Shemitah? Because you're in tied. So you're allowed to eat achilas arai, even if it was not tied. It must be because Shabbos is Kovei Lamaisa. That the case you can eat it on Shabbos, that you're not allowed to eat achilas arai on Shabbos. But now goes the punchline that if you say that Shabbos is only Kovei Adav Shnigma Malachto, these grapes and figs were not Nigma Malachto. They're semi-dried. They didn't get fully dried yet. So it's Adav Shalom Nigma Malachto. Is Shabbos Kovei even Adav Shalom Nigma Malachto? If not, if it's not Kovei, you'd be able to eat it with arai, and the Mishnah doesn't have to say a case of Shvius. The fact that the Mishnah didn't find the case that you could eat it without tithing only on Yev Shemitah, it must be that Shabbos is Kovei, even though it's not Nigma Malachto. So on a regular Shabbos of the 6 years, you wouldn't be able to eat it. The Mishnah had to go to Shvius, and that's the only case where there's no Shumas and Maasros. We'll see that inside. That's to get to the end of the Gemara. Then we'll analyze. Top line of the screen. Zifra, Beja of Nachman, I'll give me a proof to you. A proof to you that Shabbos is Kovei, I feel it without Shalom Nigma Malachto. What's the proof? From our Mishnah. It says in our Mishnah, Shabbos V'Shviyas, etc. And the whole Mishnah, that says whatever it says, but it says so much Shviyas, that the only case the Mishnah could find that you're not Chayv Trumas and Maasros is the year of Shemitah. Time of the Shviyas, the Lav Bar Yisur. The only reason why the Mishnah can find such a scenario is because it's the year of Shemitah, where there's no halachas of Trumas and Maasros. The Mishnah couldn't find a case that you could have eaten it on the other years of the Shemitah. On the 6 years of the 6 years of the Shemitah cycle, the Mishnah couldn't find the case that you could eat it without tithing. Why not? My time, it must be because Shabbos is Kovei, Afilu B'Davar Shalom Nigma Malachto. Lav Mishum, the Shabbos cover, even though it's not Nigma Malachto. The case again of our Mishnah is that it's not Nigma Malachto. The case is that it's a muktzah, semi-dried grapes. If we eat completely dried, you wouldn't need Azmana. So it's talking about that it's not Nigma Malachto, and the Mishnah seems to imply that Shabbos would be Kovei. Because if Shabbos wouldn't be Kovei, you wouldn't have to talk about Shemitah. You could talk about a regular year, and it's not Chayv Maasros because you're eating achilas arai. The Gemara answers, "Lo, it's not a proof." Shani Hasan Chibben the Amar Mikanan Yochel Amocha Kabbalah Ilavei, that maybe really Shabbos is not Kovei. The reason why you can't eat it without taking off Meiser on a regular year is not because of Shabbos, not because Shabbos is Kovei, but because he said so. And this is a new kind of a Kviyah. So far we had Shabbos is Kovei, we had Chatzir is Kovei. Now there's a new third thing coming up over here that Dibor is Kovei. If I say I want to eat it, that's another way to be Kovei. The fact he said I'm going to eat it, that itself is considered as making a formal meal out of it. If you just take a snack, you don't talk, you just take it. But if you said, I'm going to eat this tomorrow, you'll make out your mazmin, that official order, that official setting aside is already considered asmana, and it's considered a kviyus. And now you can't say I'm eating a snack anymore. This is already considered official formal eating. And that's the reason why it is not able to eat outright, not because of Shabbos B'chlal. So the Gemara deflects the whole proof. The reason why I have to say it's talking about Shemitah is because not that Shabbos is Kovei. Maybe I could tell you really Shabbos is not Kovei, but Davar Shalom Nigma Malachto. But Dibor is Kovei, but Davar Shalom Nigma Malachto because you said I want to eat it. If you said I want to eat it, then we don't care if it's Nigma Malachto or not. You said you want to eat it. We're going to stop here for today. Just to summarize the sugya, there are three things we see on this page. That's Kovei Meiser, that you're not allowed to eat it even achilas arai. One is Shabbos, one is Chatzar, and one is Dibor. That you're not allowed to eat achilas arai on Shabbos because everything's considered formal. The question of Shabbos only. The Chatzar also, the Chatzar of the house, Rashi says, also is Kovei, not allowed to eat achilas arai once it comes into the house, into the Chatzar. And Dibor, speech. If I say I want to eat this, you made an official declaration, I want to eat this, that is also considered making it formal eating, formal meal, and you're not allowed to eat arai. On the case of Dibor, and the two out of the three we know about the din of lo nigma malachta. that even if it was not yet finished, the process was not yet finished. It's a semi-dried grapes that are not yet raisins. It's not a grape, it's not a raisin, something in between. So dibor, if you say I want to eat it, that surely is koveya because you said I want to eat it. I don't care if it's not ready. I want to eat it. The other extreme, chatzar, is not koveya if it's only nigma malachta. Only if it's nigma malachta. But if it's not nigma malachta, the chatzar is not koveya. And Shabbos is the Gemara sugya. Is Shabbos koveya but davar shalom nigma malachta? Somebody said yes. He said limud aruchu. It's a fact. We have it from the Rabbi Seinu. But we're trying to bring it right from our Mishnah. The Gemara thought it's right from our Mishnah. The fact that we couldn't find anything besides shmita to be part from my said. The Gemara thought it's right that Shabbos would be koveya but davar shalom nigma malachta. But the Gemara deflects the proof because it could be the case here was that he did azmana and he said I want to eat it. That's the reason why he can't eat it without tithing. But maybe Shabbos is not koveya but davar shalom nigma malachta. So we're middle of the sugya still, but that's as far as we have today. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So my problem with this far is as follows: the hefsa is something that we would not normally eat here. That's what we're saying. It's nishtaher nishtehen. That's the hefsa. Now you're saying that the chatzir's koveya makes more sense to me. Why? Because I'm assuming you switched the place from where it was drying to the chatzir, which is more of a storage place, indicating I want this. Mashen Kain, the time, the zman of Shabbos is mimela. It's not something I did. It's something that comes once every 7 days from God. So why should Shabbos be koveya and not the chatzir?
First of all, the chatzir is not that you brought it there because you took it out of the muktzah. You're passing through, like it says. The chatzir, like it says in the Gemara over here, the chatzir you were passing through. You passed through the chatzir. Amar teina miktzos. You passed through. So it doesn't say you brought it there because you were ready to eat it and you finished drying it already and now you're passing through. That's the case that spoke about. Also, as far as Shabbos goes, let's just put the screen on a second.
But think in Svara. In Svara, if I change the makom, that would be an indicator maybe that I'm putting it aside, the markman to eat it. But if the time of Shabbos comes mimela, that's nothing about me. It's nothing about my das, my action.
The case that it says by chatzir is not that you changed it into a place. You're passing through. You're going. It could be even going on the way to put it on the roof. You're passing through. That's the case that it says. Not that you show a chashivas to it by bringing it into. It just says amar v'teinem. Also, Rashi by the first white line, Shabbos kovas. Rashi says a yichadel Shabbos. The case is that you designated it for Shabbos. Rashi goes further about lo yichadel Shabbos, but the pashas in our Gemara so far, the case was that tinokosh tomnu, they put it aside. So it wasn't just that Shabbos came by itself without anything. I designated this food to be Shabbos food. So you can go through the Gemara without that issue about Shabbos coming by itself. The case is that I designated this food for Shabbos food. That's why it becomes nikva even after Shabbos is over. So I think at this point, it answers the question that you asked. Maybe as we go further, maybe the conscious.
No, that's very helpful what you said with the yichta by Rashi and the fact that you're saying it's only passing to the chatzir. It has nothing to do with an action of mind that's actually indicating the chatzir is different. Fine. Do you want to hear the end of what we started in the beginning of the shir or not?
Yes, very much.
Okay, so it's pashut that there's no heter according to the lumdus of moilid. There's no heter. But the Isser Dirabanan of Moilid is Nexi Kibore Davar Chadash. And therefore, there's no heter of Ochel Nefesh by being Bore Davar Chadash because they're not related to Inyanim. However, almost everybody says that's what it is too. It's an Isser Dirabanan. But Rabbi Rosner said when he brought the stipler, because the stipler is Miyusad on the Ramban, which is at the beginning of Perek Gimel Hatzad. So it could be that the Ramban is holding it to their right. So here's what the Ramban's lumdus is in this cipher. The Ramban says that on Yom Tov, the heter is Meleches Hana. And that's Ochel Nefesh. It's a Meleches Hana. But the Isser would be Meleches Avoda. If you're doing something that's an Avoda, that would be a Malacha. It wouldn't be Mutter. So the basis of the heter would be that it's a Meleches Hana. So the Ramban is talking about Sayed, and he says by Sayed that you could only matter it if it was something that was already in your reshus before Yom Tov came about. But by Sayed, it's not that way. And he says that a Meleches Hana is only when you're doing a tikkun on something that's in your reshus, but something that's not kayim because it's not in your reshus, it's not yours, and then you're gonna trap it on Yom Tov. So he says that's called Malechet Avoda, and therefore it would be Aser. And so he's being Madama, that Ramban inside, to over here as a Bria Chadasha. So the Behema, just like it wasn't yours, that would be Moilid. It's like creating something in your shoes by trapping it. But okay, so that's how he's Madama. The Ravid, however, does hold that it's an Indian of Muksa, and nobody understands the Ravid or holds like him, but the Rambam has a whole different lumdus. The Rambam's lumdus is that the Isser is because, and he says this many places on many things, the Rambam, and Rashi uses this far too. The Rambam's saying you could have done it yesterday. So for Moilid here by the Rambam, which doesn't fit so well with the Gemara maybe, but he says Moilid is something that because you could have done it yesterday, it's not going to be mutter today. The clearest far it seems to be this idea that we said about, Bria Chadasha and using that Ramban. But the problem, according to Rabbi Rosner, is that if you follow the Steipler Svara through using the Ramban, it sounds like the Ramban would make it an Issa D'Oraisa, whereas almost all the other people say that this Issa is a D'Rabbanan of Nexi Kabore Davar Chadash.
I can't say that I understand. I don't understand what the tzad has to do with Molid over here. I don't understand the connection to the Ramban. And the Rambam that you mentioned, I don't understand either, because even if you could do it yesterday, you still have to say, what did I do wrong? Just saying that I could do it yesterday, you still have to talk about which malacha did I do today. So the Gemara says there's a problem. The Gemara doesn't understand what the problem is. The Gemara says Molid. So I didn't hear a translation of the words Molid. And also the Ramban you mentioned about tzad, I don't understand what has to do with Molid. I don't understand anybody besides this one shot that you're creating something new.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to understand.
I'll think into it how to answer you as well, but I hear clearly the Steipler's distinction between Malechet Hana or Malechet Avoda.
Tell me what the word Molid means. What does the word Molid mean, and what does it have to do with trapping? Trapping is a malacha.
Well, here what's obvious is that again, Molid is something that the fire didn't exist until now.
Yes.
So
okay.
according to the Svara of the Ramban, if the fire didn't exist until now, so that cannot be an avodas hana, where you're just doing a tikkun of something that's already in your reshus, rather than taking something that's davar shelo haya be'olam or davar shelo haya b'reshuscha, like the animal you trap, which is going to be a meleches avoda and aser.
I don't understand the fact that you're doing it for ochel nefesh. So why is it considered not? Why is it considered malachas avodah? It's considered malachas ochel nefesh. I'm making a fire in order to cook.
Because again, you're making a davar chadash, the gamra.
What's wrong with making a davar chadash? What's wrong with it? What's the problem? If you're always going back to making a davar chadash, so that's what Rashi says, that you're molid, you're bringing a new thing into creation. It looks like a malacha. If you don't say that word, that you're making a new thing, so what's the problem of making a fire for ochel nefesh? What's the problem? That's the Gemara wants to know. You're allowed to make a fire, bring a fire, pass a fire, make a fire bigger. Everything's fine, ochel nefesh. But you're not allowed to create a new fire. Why not? That was the Gemara's question.
Every day, every yontif, we have to have fire starting.
That's this Mishnah. The Mishnah says don't start. Why not? The Gemara says, what's the problem? Why can't you start a fire from a match? So the Gemara says because you're molded. So we're trying to figure out what that means.
I think we both have to look into the Ramban at the beginning of Perek Gimel Atzad and see it inside.
Okay, but
or the type. I don't know. I had this type where on Sukkah. I don't think I have this type where on Day. I hear some dates here, so I can't look at it.
Yes, you call.
Call
Thank
too.
you. Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. Have a good day, Ruben. Call too.